This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
热烈欢迎来自非洲大陆的兄弟姐妹。
We are here to welcome our brothers and sisters from the African continent, and we will demonstrate our hospitality to our African friends who stand side by side with the Chinese people. I am sure that with our concerted efforts, the 2018 FOCAC Beijing Summit will be a success and become a new historic monument for China-Africa friendship and solidarity.
中国的外交。
A new historic monument for China and Africa solidarity. That's according to Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi as Beijing prepares to host the third FOCAC Summit next week. Now, into its 18th year, FOCAC has become the most important platform to promote China-Africa engagement. So as African and Chinese leaders set to bolster their cooperation, what areas will the two sides emphasize at FOCAC 2018? And with the 2015 summit in Johannesburg already elevating FOCAC to a comprehensive and strategic partnership, what outcomes should be expected at this year's summit and its action plan? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Well, it is now 18 years since the inception of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, also known as FOCAC, a platform designed to enhance overall China-Africa ties. So how has FOCAC progressed over the years? Let's take a look.
The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, or FOCAC as it's more commonly known, is the most important platform for China-Africa consultation and cooperation. Since its inception in the year 2000, FOCAC is held every 3 years, and it takes place between China and a designated African country. So far, there have been 6 ministerial conferences and 2 summits in 2006 and 2015, respectively. These gatherings have pushed China-Africa cooperation to progress and upgrade in a comprehensive manner. China is now Africa's biggest single trading partner and investor. Bilateral trade volumes have gone up by 17 times since the year 2000. The FOCAC Summit in Johannesburg in 2015 held special meaning, particularly as it was the first time the summit took place in Africa. During that summit, President Xi Jinping announced a 10-point plan to boost cooperation with Africa, focusing on areas like industrialization, trade, and investment. This year's summit aims to build on the achievements made in 2015. According to the Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, 4 outcomes are expected. First, build a stronger community with a shared future between China and Africa. Second, write a new chapter for the alignment of the Belt and Road Initiative and the development of Africa. Third, set a new path for China-Africa cooperation towards a higher level. And fourth, play a new melody that connects the people of China and Africa as close as a family. As more than 50 African heads of state gather in Beijing next week, it is believed with the joint efforts of China and Africa, the 2018 FOCAC Beijing Summit will set a new historic landmark of China-Africa friendship, unity and cooperation.
Well, this year's FOCAC Summit coincides with new changes in the international situation and new demand for growth on the African continent. The summit is expected to unveil measures to step up China-Africa cooperation across the board. Well, CGTN interviewed a number of African heads of state to get their assessment and expectations of the 2018 Beijing Summit.
Africa-China Cooperation Forum is a very good forum. In it, we're able to discuss what we are capable of doing and achieving together, and the areas that need to be paid attention to or more attention to than others. But it also gives us an opportunity to reflect and take stock of what has been happening. And if we can do more, if we can do better, so that all of us continue to advance based on a stronger relationship.
I want to continue focusing on infrastructure development. I want us looking forward to attracting Chinese investment also to Kenya. But I'm also keen to see how we can begin working on reducing our trade deficit.
For Africa, we bring in FOCAC the desires we had, what we want to get through FOCAC, and again, industrialization. I mean, it's a question of now creating now industries, adding value to our whether it's a road or whatever you call it. It's still for us to create jobs for our young people.
Regarding this upcoming summit, we will draw a conclusion for our previous cooperation and look forward to more achievements in China-Africa relations. I believe the summit during the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation will be a success. I think the Belt and Road Initiative is a great idea. It links China, Africa, and the world with a better future.
Nous déjà la tenue d'un sommet entre la Chine populaire et l'Afrique.
China-Africa Summit is about multilateralism, a concept that we've always defended together, because protectionism is a threat to international and world peace. Therefore, this summit is very significant in showing protectionists that we opt for multilateralism.
The main challenge facing Africa today is achieving industrialization. I believe the upcoming China-Africa Cooperation Forum will take the cooperation between our two countries to a new level, especially under the framework of President Xi's new policy. It's now time to see what Africa can do.
Investments, trade, and tourism. That's what we would need from China. Bring investments if you can. Let us trade with you, as we are doing now, but do it in a balanced way. Bring tourists. That would be a simple formula of how we can cooperate with China.
I think it's certain the investment in infrastructure that one issue to increase cooperation in that area, because it's so important that we have infrastructure for us to develop. And another area I would like to discuss, I think I have a number of bilateral meetings also, is skills training. We need more skills training in this country, because no country can develop without a skilled labor force.
We are taking a short break now, but do stay tuned as my expert panel of guests from Nairobi and Beijing will be here to unravel the FOCAC Beijing Summit 2018. Stay with us.
China Global Television Network, from broadcast centers in Beijing, Washington and Nairobi. A unique global perspective. 6 channels and a video content service. News when you want it and where you want it. On TV screens, websites, mobile platforms and social media. CGTN. See the difference.
I'm now joined by my distinguished panel of guests to delve into the FOCAC Summit 2018. In Beijing, Professor Ho Wenping, she's the Director of African Studies for the Institute of West Asian and African Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. And with me in studio is Professor Peter Kagwanja. He's the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Africa Policy Institute. Welcome to the program. Professor Kagwanja, let me start off with you, because the leaders of China and Africa are due to meet in Beijing for the FOCAC Summit 2018. First of all, look back over the last 17 years. What have we seen in terms of political engagements, in terms of economic, that have evolved over the last 17 years?
First, to observe that in the last 17 years or 18 years, FOCAC has become the most important forum for Africans outside the African Union.
It has become important because it is having substantive gains in terms of development and transformation of Africa. Before FOCAC came onto the stage, nobody was talking about Africa Rising. Today we are talking about Africa Rising, and that Africa's rise is on the wings of cooperation with China in terms of finances, in terms of trade, in terms of industrialization, agricultural modernization, and so on. Therefore, FOCAC is really the fulcrum of Africa's development in the last 17 years and possibly in the coming years.
All right, Professor Ho, what are your thoughts though? What have we seen? Give us an overall review of the China-Africa partnership over the last 17 years.
Well, I think this FOCAC has played at least three kinds of role. Number one is it pushed China-African relations to a new high. This can be judged by like trade number, like those investment number, and lots of projects going on there. So this is for China-African relations has been improved. And secondly, it also driving Africans' economic development and all those social progress, like my colleagues just mentioned. Now people are talking about the Africans rising, but 10 years ago and even 15 years ago, people, talking about the lost decade of Africa. But now all the talking now has changed. All those potential of Africans' development has been, has been seen by all of the world. So, and this is number two. Number three, I think China-African cooperation has been leading the way for all the international cooperation with Africa. So with this summit, like China-African Summit has been taken 3 times now until this 2018. None of other big powers like in the world have done so many summits with Africa. And then we have seen all other countries now, they have been doing this similar thing, like they have summit with Africa. They want to engage with Africa more. So this has been, led by China.
Professor Kagwanja, let's go back to 2015 because that was a historic summit in Johannesburg, being the first on African soil. Though President Xi Jinping unveiled a $60 billion facility for Africa's development and a 10-point plan. Which of the 10 points, though, have we seen over the last 3 years? Which of the 10 points have we seen long-term development?
I think China has prevailed and has put a stamp firmly on the issue of infrastructure. Infrastructure, if you take, for example, the standard gauge railway in Kenya, which is now headed to Uganda, has a transformative effect in terms of development. Again, we've seen China playing a major role in terms of trade and provision of finance to Africa. You've mentioned the $60 billion to Africa. You can talk about other financing that has come to Africa. The net effect is that we're beginning to see the expansion of the African market. China today is Africa's largest trading partner. It is also the largest source of finance capital for Africa's development. Thirdly, and finally, you can say that you've seen transformation on a plethora of areas, including people-to-people cooperation. In other words, individual Chinese and individual Africans investing in each other's markets. We've seen exchange of scholarships by African students, Chinese students, scholars like myself and others, exchanging ideas. And we are beginning to see the sharing of common destiny in view of how we sustain our environments. I am personally fascinated by the concept of ecological civilization. And what I see China working together with Africa to achieve is a world that we share, which is green, which is prosperous, and which is equitable. And I think that's a dream we are sharing, and that underpins FOCAC 2018.
Right, that whole question of a shared community here. Professor Hou Mengping, China's State Council and Foreign Minister Wang Yi has outlined 4 key areas that the summit will look into. Elaborate for us those 4 points and why, in terms of building a stronger community, writing a new chapter for the Belt and Road Initiative, setting a new path for China-Africa cooperation, and playing a new melody that connects the people of China and Africa. Elaborate the meaning of that for us.
Oh yes, this is the four aspects that Minister Wang Yi mentioned. I think, to my understanding, the first one, like shared this future with the shared community, which means this is the goal. This is the aim we are going to build on between China and Africa, because we have the same past experience being colonized from those Western countries. So we also have a shared this kind of development goal for improving our living, this standard for all the people, Chinese and Africa. So we have those shared things together, including past and the future and the current. This is a goal we need to do. But what kind of approach we need to reach that goal? That is the One Belt, One Road engagement with Africa. So now China has lots of resources have been put on for building this One Belt, One Road initiative, like AIIB, Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank, a multilateral bank has been established, and also like a Silk Road Fund has been also established. So those things are ready, and then the projects will be supported from all kinds of way, and the Chinese company also ready, and African also ready. So this kind of engagement will be inked within this coming summit. And the third one is, I think that is how to make this action plan moving into a new level. We all know, we just talked about 2015 Johannesburg Summit, the 10 China-Africa Cooperation Plan. Yeah, not only infrastructure, there are also financial cooperation, like environmental protection. So all of those, we need to further develop them. So this is also approach to reach that goal. And finally, it's talking about people-to-people. People-to-people relations has been served as a foundation. So that's talking about the foundation. Without this foundation, none of others can be developed in a sustainable way.
Right. Professor Kagwanja, one of the issues that Professor Ho has mentioned, the summit will look at aligning the Belt and Road Initiative with the African Union's Agenda 2063. This is key, particularly infrastructure is key for Africa's development. What is the significance of aligning the two projects?
I think the key point here to emphasize is China's respect for other civilizations and building on other people's ideas rather than imposing its own ideas on the people. And that's what has made FOCAC very attractive. Therefore, basing its relationship with Africa on Agenda 2063 and other initiatives by the African people means that the support of China is not to its own ideas, but to Africa's ideas. And that is a very different from ancient ideas of colonization and domination or hegemonic relations between weaker and stronger powers. And I think that's what makes FOCAC such a huge attraction. And as you begin to see in terms of governance and security, which are the issues that will feature as China-Africa cooperation rise to a new level, it is not about emphasizing on military and so on. It's emphasizing on soft power that's likely to bring humanity together. And even though you may have to strengthen your militaries, the militaries are simply the last resort. Soft power is the key thing. And that, again, is a very great attraction to Africa. The point, again, is that development is good. Cooperation in government is good, but you need to secure that development. You need to secure it from corrupt forces, and you need to protect it from conflict and other negative development. Stability is key, and that's what FOCAC will now have to focus on as we move toward the new level of cooperation. How do we secure the investment that China and Africa are making to improve lives of humanity across the board?
Right. Professor Ho, in terms of trade, in terms of investments, in terms of security, and the general partnership, the growing partnership between Africa and China now, and of course what State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi has put out as the 4 key points. What will be some of the challenges, though, in realizing this prosperity for the two, China and Africa, against the onslaught, though, of multilateralism? Globalization is on the wane in some Western countries.
Yes, even though China, Africa, yeah, we both have a very strong wishes to further develop our relationship. But now, given the current international situation, there are lots of challenges now lying ahead of us. For example, those rising protectionism for the trade, and also those, the unilateralism also is on the rise. And those developed countries, yeah, they want to now using those like a trade weapon, like those tariff weapon, trying to, to do those deglobalization. But that's not the good thing for China and Africa cooperation. But we want to further, like to develop this pie for this common prosperity, rather than just make your own things better. That's enough. To set up some war, separated yourself with others. Yeah, so we need to unite together even further. So this is one thing, we need to join the hands to against this kind of protectionism, this kind of trend. Secondly, in terms of our own bilateral relationship, there are also challenges. For example, Africa, different countries, they have the different situation. Some are even in the conflict by themselves. Yeah, some now is a lot of unbalanced development. So we need to make this policy differential. Yeah, different priority, development priority goes with different country. Certainly couldn't do the things like one size fits all.
Right, Professor Ho, just to get an understanding from you though, in your estimation, though, what is it that China and Africa are doing, or what is it that China is doing to ease trade barriers for Africa?
Yeah, China has been doing that ever since this 2009 the FOCAC meeting. For example, we now open China's market to African products. Those open China's market has been getting wider and wider. Before, just started from like 200 those commodities, and from those least developed African countries, like tariff free and quota free. But now gradually, now all those products, as much as 97% of those products coming from African countries now can go to China, quota free, duty free. So this coming from at least the developed country. This is going to be gradually goes to other countries as a whole. And also we also help the African country to improve those value added these things for their products, like agricultural processing for those agricultural products, not only those raw material, because the Chinese market, we also needs import more those value added products coming from Africa. So those are the two things, even investment in Africa for like factory, manufacture things. This is one thing for moving that direction as well.
Professor Kagwanja, as we go into the FOCAC Beijing Summit, though, what is it that Africa is putting on the table?
Africa, of course, is putting on the table the fact that it is a new frontier of growth. We have the youngest population in the world and growing. By 2025, we'll have overtaken India and China as the most populous market. And that is huge for Chinese who want to invest in Africa. We are now tapping into energy resources, and Africa is a new frontier of energy. Both the East African, the Rift Valley Belt, and the Gulf of Guinea in West Africa will be the largest producer of petroleum in the future. And of course, the tapping has already begun, and nobody can overlook that. Again, Africa is offering China a human resource capital that can be used across the continent, across the world. Kenya, for example, has one of the largest human resource capital per capita, and this itself provides Chinese investors with available, skilled manpower that can be used by investors profitably. And therefore, Africa is bringing substantive economic returns to this. That's why we're talking about win-win situation for both Africa and China, not neo-colonial or imperial domination. This is really the new brotherhood of humanity that we are looking for.
Professor Ho Wenping, there will be a Beijing declaration that will be unveiled at the end of this summit. What kind of resolutions do you think we're going to see coming out of the summit?
Oh, yes. Every time this FOCAC meeting will issue 2 documents. One is called Joint Declaration. If it take place in Beijing, maybe called Beijing Declaration. If this FOCAC meeting has been taken place like in Addis Ababa, maybe called Addis Ababa Declaration. So no matter what kind of places, but this joint declaration will speak out those common, the shared value both China and Africa we have, and also the common points we have towards those international issues. For example, maybe we need to also speak out our opinion towards those protectionism right now in the world. So this is one document. Another document will be very detailed. It's called the action plan. That will be the roadmap for guiding the next 3 years, this China-African cooperation. So that will be making very detailed, even quantitatively, how many soft loan will be provided, like how many rural schools will be built in Africa, like how many agricultural demonstration center, and what kind of investment pattern, so in what kind of way, like infrastructure. So that will guiding a lot of those sectors and measured by those quantitative numbers.
Right.
So those are the 2 major documents and the results.
Professor Kagwanja, what kind of resolutions do you think Africa will be looking for? What other areas are we likely to see more gains being made, and what do you expect to come out of the summit?
The post-Johannesburg cooperation between China and Africa gave us an expanded footprint in regard to infrastructure. And therefore, a lot of investment went into infrastructure. Now we need to move to the next stage, which is how do we make this infrastructure pay for itself? That will call for action at 3 levels. The level 1 is enhanced industrialization and exchange of technology in order to enable a freer Africa that is richer and relatively prosperous. Now the other level is that, of course, the people to people, meaning more training of skills, exchange of ideas, and exchange of culture, so that there is a deeper understanding between the Chinese people and the African people, and a kind of a cooperation between the 2 civilizations. The third point, I think, is the deepening of peace and security. And peace and security here will also entail exchanges of lessons learned by both civilizations in terms of creating stable environment to underpin long-term planning and implementation of whatever was agreed in Johannesburg, what will be agreed in Beijing, and what will be implemented after the Beijing conference. And I think within those frameworks, given the stage we have reached in terms of trade, in terms of finance, in terms of agricultural modernization, in terms of creating a green environment, that in itself is going to move the 2 civilizations and humanity at large to a whole new level of cooperation.
Right, Professor Kagwanja and Professor Ho Weng-Ping, to you both. Thank you very much for your insights. Well, that's all we have time for this week, but thank you to my guests for their insights. Professor Ho Weng-Ping in Beijing. She's the Director of African Studies for the Institute of West Asian and African Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. And with me in studio, Professor Peter Kagwanja. He's the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Africa Policy Institute. Now, the conversation goes online through our social media handles on Facebook and Twitter. And you can also catch the show on the CGTN Africa website, as well as our YouTube playlist. Do tune in again next week for more Talk Africa from me, Beatrice Marshall, and the team in Nairobi. Goodbye.